simple or bare, I don't care. It's quite a rough ride, just like life. But I'm kind of patient, 'cause only time will tell.
You know, man, we both live in Puerto Rico. At some point, we should do a show. If you're not too busy doing all the other things that you're doing. Good guy. I don't know, if you guys don't know Crypto Crow, you should watch his show. He's the OG, one of the OGs that I used to watch all the time. And I still do it from time to time. I just get so damn busy with stuff.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome. I am the Crypto Crow, and today we're going to do something completely different because I've been doing some research on I was going to do some research on Helium, and I was working on a video, Helium versus World Mobile Token. How do they compare? Because it seems like people are kind of pitting them against one another, because even though their use cases are completely different, their tokens are different, everything about them is ultimately different. But I think people are looking at them as a rather than a connectivity and an IoT kind of platform protocol, all this stuff, people are kind of putting them in the same basket. I've watched a lot of videos, I've read a lot of articles, I've tried to really get a grasp on Helium. I'm a little more familiar with World Mobile Token, and I started watching a lot of videos, and some of the articles that I've read everything about Helium from its inception all the way up to current mining trends, right? Or lack thereof, and some of the issues associated with mining Helium. And so basically I found this video that we're gonna watch this and we're gonna react to it, okay? Because I thought of all the videos I've watched, Coin Bureau once again has done a phenomenal job on not only their research, because I watched this video and I learned so much from it. I thought, well, maybe some of you that are, followers of mine, I mean, this guy's got 2 million followers, okay? And I thought he does such a great job of educating about Helium, but there were some things that I've discovered in some of my research. So I thought, rather than reinvent the wheel, I would just react to Coin Bureau's video and then fill in some of the gaps. Not to say that there are any gaps at the time he published this video. I'm not putting him down at all. I love this man. I think he's got 2 million followers because of his accent. I'm just saying, or it could just be his content. But anyway, but especially relevant to this is what is the mining element to Helium, and which is severely lacking right now, and we're going to go into some of that, and basically how I feel Coin Bureau's kind of education video on Helium, whatever you want to call it, I don't want to say review because it's not necessarily a review, but anyway, we're going to get into it. And then I'm going to pause it throughout, and we're going to discuss some of the tips and notes and things. And if this video does well, it may be a regular thing, because I have been so busy. It is difficult for me to put the amount of time I'm sure Coin Bureau put into. I'm sure this gentleman has a whole team of people. I'm just me, and I've got so many other projects. So, but yeah, here we go. Let's just give this a watch, and we're going to discuss it as we move through.
Did you know that governments have shut down the internet almost 1,000 times over the last 5 years? This was done for no other reason than to silence dissent, and it underscores the importance of having a decentralized peer-to-peer internet that can't be turned off by power-hungry politicians.
Now, you know what I'm talking about as far as the accent, right? Because I think I might have close to 2 million views if I had that accent. I'm just saying, I could be wrong. But yeah, who knows?
This is exactly what Helium is hoping to become. Today, I'm going to give you a quick explanation of what Helium is, bring you up to speed on some of the project's most important updates, and tell you why HNT could become a top 10 cryptocurrency.
Which I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to say this. At first glance, I thought, wow, there's a lot of potential for Helium, and there's a lot and there still is, but even since the time this video was published on February 24th of 2022, there's 113,804 views, okay? And at the time this was published, things might have been a little more promising. But when you're talking about an ecosystem that's ultimately driven by hotspots and miners, and these miners are really not being rewarded the way they once were. And I can see that being a detriment to the adoption of, establishing this mesh network throughout the world, even though the miners are selling like crazy and it's really difficult to get. We're going to get to that. I keep jumping ahead.
I know you're eager to explore, but you need to know what you're in for. This video is for education and entertainment and nothing more. Please contact a financial advisor if you're feeling poor. Also note that HNT is a crypto.
If you're feeling poor.
Now, if the YouTube algorithm brought you here, my name is Guy, and my mission is to make crypto clear. I do this by creating the highest quality crypto content you'll ever see or hear. Coins, tokens, news, reviews, and other topics in the crypto sphere. If the inflation of fiat currencies fills you with fear, subscribe to the channel and ping that notification.
Subscribe to Coin Bureau if you're not already. I will say that. Every video I see from this guy is just it's not like me at all. He doesn't ramble about anything. He's obviously reading from a teleprompter. And I've discussed doing something similar to this, and I've tried it in the past. Me reading a teleprompter and pre-scripting video content just doesn't seem to be what people want from me. But I figured the next best thing is to just react to other people's videos like that, because it's just the easiest way to share my thoughts, be me, and still get the information across without going on 10 different tangents at the same time, which I'm totally known for.
Bell to get the knowledge you need to make your purchasing power last for years. If you're on the go, you can skip around using the timestamps below, but do your best to stick around until the end of the show. Right, that's all you need to know. Let's see how big helium could grow. If this is the first time you're hearing about helium, here's the TLDR. Helium was founded in 2013 by Sean Fanning, Sean Carey, and Amir Halim. And even though it's always had the same mission, it didn't become a crypto project until 2018. Helium was created by Helium Systems, Inc., a for-profit software company based in the United States.
One quick point about this. Helium became a crypto project in 2018. What does that mean? It means that the bear market of crypto is where you begin to build. Well, they obviously started to build this system before then, years before. So they had a fundamental basis for growth. But, 2018, that's when you start growing and you build in the crypto market, preparing for, 2020, 2021, right? That's the way you do it. That's why I say you always build in the bear market, whether you're accumulating your bags or you're building a platform or building a project. The bear market is where you prepare, you educate, you execute. Bull market is where you profit.
Helium's development is coordinated by the Decentralized Wireless Alliance, a non-profit that also appears to be based in the United States. Helium raised almost $40 million in its early days from tech VCs, including Google Ventures, $15 million from crypto.
I will say right there, it sounds like he's saying tech VCs. VCs, venture capitalist groups, is what he's saying.
VCs in 2019, and has since raised hundreds of millions more from both. Its mainnet went live in July 2019, following the deployment of the first physical devices which power its peer-to-peer networks. Now, Helium consists of 4 components: Helium hotspots, the HNT cryptocurrency, the Helium console, and the Helium blockchain. Helium hotspots are physical devices which transmit wireless signals, including long-fi and 5G. Long-fi is a low-frequency signal with a long reach that's used for IoT-compatible devices such as electric scooters. And 5G is a high-frequency signal that's used for, standard internet stuff. Helium hotspots come in all shapes, sizes, and configurations.
And are very, very difficult to find. I could go into it right now, but ultimately, these hotspots range from anywhere from $200 to $2,500, and they basically provide the same yield, because your yield in mining is based on a variety of different things, such as the number of other hotspots within an area, so that they're all validating one another. And the more validations you have, the more throughput, I guess, you get. But it's just not profitable right now. And I'm going to get into some calculations later.
And that's because the instructions to make them are completely open source. You could theoretically make a hotspot yourself if you wanted to. There are also
which you'd probably get done faster than you would buying one from some of these companies, because the majority of them are like 8 months out. And a lot of it is because of back order. And if you look at, let's see here, this is the Explorer, the Helium Explorer. And the reality is here, where am I seeing, let's see, mobile validators, maybe it's here. Staked validators, 3,634. Trying to find the, okay. HNT price, it just keeps going down. It's down another 5% on the 24 hours, down to 818. I mean, I might get to $5. So the numbers of this video are even going to be more hotspots. That's what I was looking for. There are almost 1 million hotspots, up almost 30,000 hotspots in the last 31 days. Okay. And you can see this. This is basically where all the hotspots are. So you can zoom in and you can see this network, basically places of congestion, all of that. And there's more and more information showing you, and you click on one of these and it'll tell you like what validators, what nodes and all that stuff are within the certain area. And that's fantastic, especially if you're looking to buy a miner and you're like, okay, I want to fill a gap. But again, they take forever to get unless you're getting them on the secondary market, which you can get them on Amazon. But because of the switch to 5G, and he talks some more a little about this, but I'm telling you, these miners are difficult to get. And there's a question right now as to whether or not buying the miner is worthwhile over just buying the HNT, because, and I'll calculate that, but it's more beneficial if you're trying to accumulate HNT to just buy it right now. Rather than spend $500 or $2,500 on a miner, because you're probably only going to get, if anything, okay, which we'll get into, you might get a quarter of an HNT a week or something. I mean, I think generally I'm seeing like half an HNT a month from one of these hotspots. So, like anything else, mining is always the early adopter's worm.
Dozens of companies that create helium hotspots if you prefer to buy rather than build. And the first hotspot manufacturer was Helium Systems, Inc. All companies that create helium hotspots are thoroughly vetted by the Decentralized Wireless Alliance and approved via community governments. Over 600,000 helium hotspots have been set up so far, and recent comments by Helium co-founder Amir Halim suggest there are another 2.4 million waiting to be manufactured and shipped.
So as you just saw, at the time of this video in February, about 600,000 hotspots. Now it's almost 1 million. It's almost 400,000. You basically say 100,000 hotspots are hitting the market every month. So you can see why a lot of these companies are on back order. But the question is why? Is it because they're cheap? They're cheap miners that can provide a passive yield. But the thing of it is if they only work, let's just say they work 3 to 5 years. In 3 to 5 years, what do you stand to make? 3 to 5 years at current calculations based on, let's say, 5 times 12. So let's say even if you got one HNT a month for 5 years, that's 60 HNT. You're still very much likely better off just buying the HNT, which brings me to the question, what other value is there in operating one of these hotspots or multiple hotspots if you're going to, because you can only have one per household. So if you wanted to run your own mesh network and create your own network where you're all validating each other and all of that, ultimately you'd need a bunch of friends and using their homes.
The reason why people have been buying Helium hotspots is because you can earn Helium's native cryptocurrency called HNT for broadcasting their Long-Fi and 5G signals. Helium hotspots earn HNT when they relay data packets from any devices connected to their peer-to-peer networks, and through a novel proof-of-work process called proof of coverage. Proof of coverage involves challenging other Helium hotspots that are within range to prove that they are transmitting a signal. This incentivizes people to set up Helium hotspots in a mesh-like manner, creating a massive peer-to-peer network. Individuals and institutions can use a special dashboard called the Helium Console to leverage this massive peer-to-peer network for their operations. So far, Helium has partnered with dozens of companies and even the Californian city of San Jose. Naturally, the Helium Console isn't free, but its usage fees technically aren't paid in HNT. Instead, they're paid for in data credits, which are created by burning HNT and are analogous to airline miles in that they cannot be sold, cannot be transferred, and cannot be converted back into HNT. Data credits are also used to pay for all transactions on the Helium blockchain, which is operated by nearly 3,500 validators who must stake a minimum of 10,000 HNT and lock it up for 5 months to earn about 5.3% per year. Delegation is not possible, and additional HNT staking doesn't increase rewards. The Helium blockchain was built from the ground up, and it can only process about 2 transactions per second. This is because its purpose is not to support a booming DeFi ecosystem or NFT marketplace, but to securely power global decentralized peer-to-peer networks. Now, all this barely scratches the surface of how Helium works, and I strongly suggest going back and watching my first video about the project if anything I just said didn't make sense. That will be in the description. Now, it's only been a few months since I last covered Helium, but quite a bit has happened since then. Shortly after my last video about the project in October, Helium announced the introduction of a new kind of hotspot called a data-only hotspot. Data-only hotspots are like regular hotspots, except that they don't participate in proof-of-coverage rewards and don't require elaborate hardware to operate. Data-only hotspots effectively lower the cost of participation on the Helium network without compromising its proof-of-coverage process. FYI, all data transmitted on Helium is encrypted by default. At the end of October, Helium announced a partnership with Dish Network to bring peer-to-peer 5G to its 8 million customers. Specifically, it'll make it possible for Dish Network customers to deploy their own Helium 5G hotspots and start earning HNT for providing 5G signal. In November, Helium experienced 3 severe network disruptions. The first 2 were caused by abnormally large blocks being submitted to the Helium blockchain, which validators were unable to process. The third disruption was due to a synchronization issue that arose because of the second disruption. To fix these issues, Helium developers put a cap on the maximum block size and improved the synchronization process between validators and hotspots. In January, the Decentralized Wireless Alliance announced the expansion of its grants program by adding 2 new advisors who will oversee upcoming projects that are building with or on Helium. Helium also partnered with a project called DataGovs to monitor real-world data using Helium-compatible devices, starting with the city of Miami. At the end of January, Grayscale announced that it was considering creating an HNT trust, which would make it possible for institutions to invest in the project in a regulated manner. Unfortunately, an HNT trust has yet to materialize. More on that later. In February, Helium announced that it had released a software developer kit that will make it possible for Helium hotspot manufacturers to create their own custom mobile apps for their brand of hotspots. Helium also announced that it had raised an additional $200 million from various crypto VCs, bringing the valuation of the company behind Helium to a handsome $1.2 billion. Now, raising that amount of capital...
That's ultimately a heck of a lot of cash. And the thing of it is from what I'm seeing, a lot of this cash, I have to assume, is going into the building of these hotspots, and like what other revenue is being generated by Helium through the licensing? Is there licensing? I mean, it's open source. Apparently anybody can build some of these hotspots, and they're all back ordered. But where are they generating revenue? That's the only thing I don't understand. And I know Mark Cuban had talked about this, and I know some other YouTubers that I've seen recently have talked about, they're making like $6,000 a month, right? But I think cumulatively they've generated something like 600 something odd $1 million in capital. And I get that they're building their infrastructure and everything, but there's just not. If the mining yield is so low now, and on top of that, the price of helium is so low, what's the strategy to obtaining one of these hotspots and running them profitably? Because you don't, there's so many things that have been changing with helium. It seems like every couple of months that are pretty significant changes going on with helium, for better or worse. If you're asking a miner, they're not too happy. If you're asking other people, everything looks promising, and it does. This all looks fantastic. I really am new to the whole helium idea, so I'm a late comer to the game here. However, I'm not seeing anything that's truly blowing my skirt back just yet, because this is all about empowering the Internet of Things ecosystems on a blockchain that ultimately uses radio signals instead of kind of the internets, unless you're talking 5G. 5G, in my opinion, the whole purpose of 5G is to empower the Internet of Things, as well as other IO somethings, right? There's a lot going on in the tech space as it relates to the Internet of Things. And so, this is all just laying a framework, kind of a fundamental structure for the future of its growth. And when you have major companies like Google that are on board with helium, as well as many others, the question to me isn't necessarily like, even if let's say I bought a miner today, maybe I don't even run it today. Maybe I wait until 2025. You know what I mean? I've got my miner. I'm not degrading it while I'm mining up helium while it's super cheap. And, maybe I'm mining it through the peak of through the bull market. Maybe I start mining in 2024 and I start accumulating there, and I'm spending my 5 years accumulating that way. The question to me isn't necessarily, is it only going to mine helium, and is that helium going to be once again profitable in terms of the initial cost of purchasing a hotspot? My question is, what other perks and benefits might be associated with owning one of these hotspots? I technically bought one, but I bought one from a company. I didn't have my whole address in there. I emailed them. They haven't responded. I don't even know if they're a legit company. That's a problem with buying some of this stuff. There's another company here, Minted. So I bought one of these, but it wasn't from getminted.com. It was from another site. This product is currently sold out. That's probably why. They got my Ethereum, so they're like, nobody's emailed me or said anything like, hey, we're going to need to refund you because this site says they're sold out, the other site didn't. And I'm kind of like, was the other site a scam site? And I just jumped the gun. So be very, very careful, because something tells me that there's a lot of scammy stuff going on as it relates to this mining hardware, because it's open source, because anybody could put something out there, and quite frankly, because anybody can, copy a website and make it sound like a bunch of products are available that aren't. So I may have been duped. I don't know. It wasn't very much. It was like $200. It is what it is. Lesson learned. And I would rather learn a big lesson for $200 than significantly more. Now, the problem is you can't get mining hardware, and you can find some of these on Amazon, but the problem is I don't really like the idea of buying on a secondary marketplace. The same way I would never buy a ledger or a hardware wallet on the secondary marketplace. I don't want somebody having bought a bunch of them in bulk, hack them, change them so they can access what I put on them, and then reselling it to me so that I trust it, put all my stuff on it, I use it, and then they're just basically able to bleed it out whenever they want. And I'm not saying that's possible. I don't know the I don't know the tech behind these miners, how they're built, the security behind them. I don't know. I don't know enough. I haven't heard of any reports of that happening, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. And a lot of people say don't buy from Bobcat directly, because even though the Bobcat equipment is really good, they charge insane prices. Like it's super expensive. The latest 5G miner or hotspot, it's like you can pick between low RAN and 5G. I think it's low RAN, but they're $2,500, the most expensive miner out there. And then if you have to wait 8, 9, 10 months to get the hardware at all, well, that's all time that you're losing, that you're not mining, that could be potentially profitable depending on where you're at in the market. So keep that in mind.
Post ICO is a sign that a crypto project is super legit. And you can learn about the other crypto projects that fall into this category by using the link in the description. Anyways, all these updates, announcements, and developments have taken HNT on a tear. And though it's fallen more than 50% from its all-time high, it's still in a strong uptrend. This is actually somewhat surprising given HNT's tokenomics. Those of you who watched my previous video about the project might recall that HNT's initial inflation is fairly aggressive, with its supply going from 0 to 150 million in its first 4 years. If my calculations are correct, HNT's circulating supply has increased by about 14 million in just the last 4 months. Assuming an average price of $30, that's $420 million of potential sell pressure. While it's very unlikely that all of this newly minted HNT was sold, 35% of it went to the holders of Helium's 10,000 security tokens as per the initial distribution schedule. Now, I can't seem to find any information about who exactly is holding these security tokens and how many these entities hold, but a recent interview with Helium's COO suggests most of them are held by Helium's investors rather than the team. What's interesting there is that one of Helium's biggest investors is Multicoin Capital, and it is insanely bullish on Helium as a project. As such, it's safe to assume that it isn't selling too much HNT, if any. Even so, a substantial chunk of HNT's newly minted supply was likely sold, because that remaining 65% is going to validators and Helium Hotspot Operators as rewards. Funnily enough, it looks like the biggest buyers of HNT have actually been Helium's validators and hotspot operators. Almost 1,000 validators have been added since October, and each one must have purchased at least 10,000 HNT.
Which is huge. I mean, that's huge, but for what? That's the thing. Right now, it's just not all that profitable, if at all. And I've seen multiple reports of people asking when their miners are going to start producing anything, because depending on where they're at and what the mesh network looks like in their area, they could produce nothing at all. It's not like Ethereum mining or Bitcoin mining where you just plug it in and it starts purring away, confirming blocks and things. That's not what this is. So depending on your area, your range, the size of the antenna that you're using to send out these radio waves, all that stuff plays a factor. So
if you do the maths, that's almost 10 million HNT or $300 million of buying pressure. As for hotspot operators, Helium's documentation states that connecting a Helium hotspot to the blockchain costs $40 in data credits. It also specifies that this connection cost is usually paid for by the manufacturer of that hotspot when it's purchased. Almost 400,000 hotspots have been added since October, and that means each one bought and burned $40 worth of HNT. Again, if you do the maths, that's $16 million of buying pressure. This leaves around $100 million of buying pressure unaccounted for, and I reckon that this outstanding amount came from speculative investors and then some. This speculative investing has obviously declined as the crypto market has struggled, but recall that there are still around 2.4 million hotspot devices that are waiting to connect to Helium's network. This means HNT is basically guaranteed to see a minimum of $100 million of buying pressure in the coming months, which is a lot for an altcoin with a market cap of around $2 billion. The real question is whether HNT could really rally as a result, and the answer lies in Helium's roadmap. Although Helium doesn't technically have a roadmap for 2022, upcoming milestones for the project can be found in Helium's 2021 roadmap, its blog posts, interviews with the team, and Helium's pending improvement proposals. So
that's that's another issue with me, is that they are, and some people have made this argument with Cardano as well. I mean, but there's definitely no comparison here. But ultimately, the fact that, they're just not meeting the milestones, $600 something million in capital, and they're not able to make their own milestones on their roadmap. That to me is a bit of an issue. However, when you're dealing with telecom and connectivity and things as complicated as this, in some instances, there are licensing requirements that you have to abide by, which World Mobile Token is doing a great deal of all over the place. They're trying to do everything they can. There's so many different elements to this, so I give some leeway because you never know how long some things are going to take, especially when you're dealing with government bodies and things. Things can take longer than you expect. But yeah. I mean, Guy basically says, hey, to look at their 2022 roadmap, you got to look back at 2021 because they're working on those now, and I don't like that.
Starting with Helium's 2021 roadmap, it looks like it didn't manage to meet many of its milestones last year, so it's likely that these will be met this year.
Hopefully.
The first missing roadmap milestone relates to validators, namely overstaking and slashing. In plain English, this means validators will be able to earn more by staking more, and will also risk losing some or all of their stake if they try and manipulate the network. The second missing roadmap milestone relates to the proof of coverage protocol, and all the 2021 roadmap says is to be determined. Now, I suspect this has to do with stuff like region-specific proof of coverage rewards that I covered in the previous Helium video. The third missing roadmap milestone relates to introducing additional blockchains to Helium's network, something that's much needed given its current bottlenecks. The fourth and final missing roadmap milestone relates to the development of unspecified decentralized applications, which is again difficult to do given Helium's blockchain. When it comes to the upcoming milestones in Helium's blog posts, most of these can be found in Helium's year-end recap for 2021. First, Helium will introduce additional light hotspots that will make it easier for people to join the network. Right now, regular Helium hotspots cost between $500 and $1,000, and light hotspots are expected to cost up to 10 times less than that, while offering the same rewards and features. Second, Helium will seek to secure additional roam agreements for its networks. For context, roam agreements make it possible for individuals and institutions to supplement their existing networks with Helium's peer-to-peer networks. Third, Helium will try to capitalize on the end of 3G networks, which are being scrapped in many countries, including the United States, where AT&T just shut down its 3G network. Operators of over 2 billion 3G-dependent devices around the world will have to either upgrade to 4G or build their own private networks by the end of the year. And Helium...
So basically what he's saying, and that is a really big deal, from Tesla to Jeep, the end of 3G network is a problem for millions of car owners. Basically, these companies are either going to be able to, they're going to have to upgrade their systems, but anyway, yeah, or they could adopt and work out a relationship with Helium. And it's likely many will, if I'm to guess, because why would they spend all this money on building what already exists in Helium? That could be pretty beneficial, especially if you think about it. What if every one of these cars were to have their own Helium hotspot in them? What if you just had mobile roaming hotspots all over the place, just constantly connecting and interlinking with each other? Sounds like that could be a possibility at some point.
Hopes to offer them an alternative. Make no mistake, if Helium can capture even a fraction of the 3G market, the demand for HNT will be off the charts. And finally, Helium will roll out at least 40,000 5G-compatible hotspots created by FreedomFi in the United States by the end of the year, which will make Helium one of the largest 5G networks in the country. In terms of upcoming milestones in interviews with the Helium team, most of these were revealed by Helium's COO, Frank Mong. In November, Frank said that Helium will be onboarding another 40 to 50 Helium hotspot manufacturers in the coming months, bringing the total amount of Helium manufacturers to around 75. Regarding 5G coverage, Frank estimates that there will be 260,000 5G-compatible hotspots set up in the United States by the end of 2022, in addition to the 40,000 coming from FreedomFi. And that reminds me, Helium's documentation notes that all manufacturers will have to create their own Helium apps starting in March this year, as Helium's own mobile app will only work with the hotspots created by Helium Systems, Inc. Helium will also be creating a dedicated mobile Helium wallet. Anyhow, I digress. Frank also hinted that Helium is on the cusp of securing additional partnerships with telecommunications companies to patch the, quote, soft spots in their existing networks, especially when it comes to 5G. This relates to what Helium co-founder Amir Halim said in a December panel, and that is that Helium's next network after 5G will be wireless networks for mobile phones. This could put Helium in direct competition with telecoms companies, and that's something the project actively avoided at the beginning when it was just getting started.
But now they have more capital to fight frivolous battles if they need to.
Now it looks like it's become big enough to put up a fight. Meanwhile, on Helium's GitHub, 15 additional Helium improvement proposals, or HIPs, have been added since I last covered the project. HIPs that are currently in discussion are worth pointing out. The first is HIP 41, which proposes an elaborate on-chain governance mechanism for Helium. I believe this is an improvement to an earlier HIP about on-chain governance.
Quick question. Let's say you're Tesla or your Lucid Air or whatever, one of your electric vehicles had a mobile hotspot installed in them, and it was generating, $30 a month. Whatever. When the market starts to come back, Helium's prices are a little higher, and it basically offset your charging fees. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud about the potential for this. I will tell you this, as we're getting a little closer to the end. I don't have any Helium, and I don't have a miner. I don't have anything yet. I'm probably going to get a miner just for the heck of it, and I'm probably going to buy a little Helium just to hold on to it for a rainy day and see what happens. It may end up being one of those crypto tokens that I hold forever and never touch because I don't care to. Or it could be something that becomes quite fruitful as the markets change and we start adapting 5G, IoT, and all these other things associated with it. So, yeah, I mean, that's on my agenda at some point.
Second is HIP 48, which proposes adding support for the Internet Protocol, or IP. The authors seem to imply that IP support will make it easier to onboard the 2 billion devices that will be looking for a home as 3G is scaled back. The same authors of HIP 41 also recently published HIPs 51, 52, and 53, which seek to create decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, for Helium, its low-frequency network, and its 5G network, respectively. As recent events have shown, community governance can be a powerful thing, especially when a sizable treasury is involved. And you can learn more about it using the link in the description. Anyhow, call me crazy, but I can't help but feel that Helium is desperately trying to decentralize. And this brings me to the concerns I have about the project. The first concern I have about Helium has to do with regulations. For starters, there's the HNT coin. As some of you may have noticed, the only US exchange HNT is listed on is Binance US. According to CoinDesk, this is likely because HNT is at risk of being considered a security, like a stock, in the eyes of the SEC rather than a currency. Now, I reckon this is a reasonable assessment, given that Helium literally sold security tokens to investors. This regulatory uncertainty means cryptocurrency exchanges in the United States are likely hesitant to list HNT, and it could also affect whether Grayscale can create a trust for HNT. Helium's efforts to decentralize everything from its manufacturing to app support suggest this is in fact the case, because being, quote, sufficiently decentralized is the criterion that many believe the SEC is using to classify cryptocurrencies as currencies and not securities.
At the same time, though, we've seen some guidance basically say that if a project is able to decentralize itself and maintain full operational capacity, that the security status could be overlooked. That it may then become a commodity of a new ecosystem, a decentralized ecosystem, so forth and so on. So the SEC is trying to figure out ways to not label everything a security, but they're also kind of keeping it vague enough so that if you turn out to be some sort of scammy, that they have all the means to go after you if they need to or they so chose. So I think Helium is from everything that I've seen, it appears that Helium is quite a legitimate product and project. But I think now that they've built all this infrastructure, they've got all of this utility, they've got all of this stuff going, and they're building momentum. I think now they're looking to change how some of this stuff operates to avoid any legal issues. And the thing of it is that when you're talking about telecom, if telecom companies that are worth billions of dollars have a problem with Helium acting less as a supplement to connectivity and more a replacement to the services they offer, and they start getting hit noticeably, well, if you don't think they have relationships and lobby groups and all this other stuff in place to help them along the way, to maybe push somebody like the SEC to create some problems for that competitor, I have a hard time believing that wouldn't be a possibility in the future. And I think that's one of the concerns that I would have.
It's not just Helium that's facing regulatory scrutiny, however. From what I was able to gather from interviews with the team, Helium hotspot operators have been running into regulatory issues as well, especially those operating outside of the United States. This is because Helium currently operates on frequencies that aren't regulated in the United States, but of course this isn't the case elsewhere. There's also no guarantee that this won't change in the United States going forward, especially...
Yeah. So there's actually something that the U.S. hasn't regulated to hell and back. This is the first time I've ever seen anything being okay in the U.S. and not everywhere else. This is the polar opposite. That's interesting.
Especially as 5G networks become more common. Speaking of Helium hotspot operators, it doesn't look like Helium's network has achieved any meaningful user adoption. At first glance, Helium's coverage map looks nothing short of amazing. However, there's another map which apparently shows how many devices are connected to the Helium network in real time, and as you can see, there aren't very many. Now, to be fair, this lack of adoption could be partially or even entirely explained by the chronic supply chain issues we've seen over the last year or so. These supply chain issues have hit the tech industry hard because it's caused a shortage in semiconductor chips, and Amir mentioned in that aforementioned panel that Apple is getting priority now that production is finally ramping back up. Chip shortages are also part of why there's a backlog of 2.4 million hotspots, and that's something that could affect the rollout of Helium's 5G hotspots later this year. To make matters worse, tech giants will likely get priority on that front as well. Amazon and Elon Musk's Starlink are working hard on similar network solutions. Now, with all that said, there is a silver lining to this situation.
So I'm going to stop right there for a second and basically say, listen, if Starlink starts to do something similar, it's game over. You might, and here's the thing, when you're talking about mining yield, how much of that mining yield could potentially increase as adoption increases? That's the one thing I haven't really seen much of when it comes to Helium is, okay, you've got almost 1 million hotspots out there, and none of them are really generating all that much of anything, little bits here and there. Not even, you're lucky to generate one HNT token a month, which is nothing. That right now, that's like $9 a month, $8 a month, whatever it is. And, even if it goes back to its all-time high, that's cool, but that's still not a significant sum of money for something like this, especially given the expense of the hotspot itself. So what I'm thinking, and right now there aren't enough systems in place to truly take advantage of the 5G elements of this equipment, but we all know 5G is a big thing, and it's a big deal, and it's coming in all over the place, whether you know it or not. And quite frankly, I think that the 5G side to this is it could prove a lot more fruitful, as like Guy said earlier, when the equipment and the companies that are out there, they need to upgrade their networks from 3G up. Well, there's a good chance that they could start taking advantage of helium, and we'll start seeing those user adoption numbers grow. Because honestly, I think that when you've got a company like Google in play, as well as some of these other big companies, they're going to get the relationships. I just think right now it's still all about framework, and like has been discussed in this video, a lot of this stuff is going to be based around the regulations as well. It's going to be based around making sure that it's a decentralized network, that it basically gets some sort of, nod from the SEC saying you're doing fine, you're not a problem. And at that point, once they have that, I could see them building more and more relationships. Right now, they're really on a limb, I think, trying to build a lot of this stuff, but they really need to figure out how these these hotspot operators are going to find it more fruitful, honestly.
Helium has no competition in cryptocurrency, and this is something that many VCs have mentioned as being a major selling point for the project. In contrast to tech giants and telecoms companies, Helium can also move quickly, and it has no shortage of public support, because what it's trying to achieve is easy to understand and objectively valuable. Helium may have a hard time in 2022, but to me, it's a no-brainer that HNT will eventually become a top cryptocurrency.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. It's pretty much the end. Obviously, Guy's an investor, I think, and and he likes the project. I like it too, to a degree, but like this is so wildly inaccurate, because I was doing some calculations last night against the graph based off of where I am and all that. It's just not all that lucrative. I mean, monthly, this is saying 15 HNT a month, but you're not getting that. You're not, and this is at the low end. This is with 2 witnesses within 2 miles. You're not getting that. And a lot of the stuff that I've been reading, there's this article. I'm going to throw all of this, including the link to Coin Bureau's video. That way you can go and see the original video they did like 3 months prior. I really do love Coin Bureau. Thank you for doing that, because it made this video possible ultimately, because it's, giving me something to react to, that, they did so much of the work. I might as well just show everybody, like, hey, here you go. And hopefully you find this even just a little bit more informative, just with my own impressions, given what I've seen over the years. I definitely think that there's a lot of potential here, but I would also suggest anyone looking to get into helium, whether you're looking to get in as a miner, or you're looking to get in as a speculator, or you get into you just want to hold it. Here's the thing. We're in 2022 right now, 8/15/2022, and we have a long way to go. Okay. I mean, the next Bitcoin halving's not until 2024, likely April of 2024. From there, we likely have another couple years of upward momentum and a parabolic run, hopefully, which we may not see a parabolic run. We saw some kind of whimper runs in the most recent peak. And this is the time we build. So, and HNT helium may not be in any massive hurry from 2021 to 2022 to do a lot of these things in their roadmaps and milestones and things, because they already have the systems in place. From here, it's ironing out the wrinkles before they really start pulling in more mass adoption. I think The other question that's still never really been answered to me is who exactly wants to use this? Who needs to pipe into this? Is this a kind of thing where maybe they would benefit from working with someone like a World Mobile Token? Maybe there's a relationship there to be had to where, because World Mobile Token basically operates and builds their mesh with these giant, I don't even remember what they call them, dare I say balloons. I don't think they like people calling them balloons because they're more high tech than that. But they're building these mesh networks in places throughout Africa and so forth. And the use case for that is phenomenal. That is unconnecting or connecting the unconnected. That is enabling people without access to any kind of connection or internet or anything, and then giving them that empowerment. Helium may be a flip side to that, being able to add functionality to that kind of connectivity. So I don't know if there's a gel opportunity there for the two companies. They're not competing. So when people say Helium or World Mobile Token, I would say both. Why not? World Mobile Token is doing some significant things on the Cardano blockchain, and what they're building is unlike anything else out there. Helium, I could say the same thing. I mean, this is the first crypto blockchain based system like this, and I think it could very well be a big deal. However, you're talking, $650 million or thereabouts in funding. And, the question is this the kind of operation that maybe somebody, well, it looks like volume has gone up 25% in the last 24 hours in trade volume. So that's pretty cool. I guess the question is this the type of thing that another big telecom company doesn't just buy out and adopt, if it becomes too competitive for whatever reason, but the price continues going down. It looks like volume's going up as people are selling because the price is down at $8.20. So down 4%. But, again, I've been telling everybody, I expect another big leg down in this month. I mean, we're now on 8.15. Maybe we're starting our leg down. I'm not doing any TA in this video, but, we'll have to wait and see. As I always say, never invest more than you can afford to lose. None of us are financial advisors. We're just people trying to explore this new wave of technocracy. Just kidding. Am I? But yeah, 5G, Internet of Things, it's all going to be a really, really big deal. By 2030, I could see Helium being like a big deal. So yeah, I definitely plan on buying a miner and just for no other reason than to just play with it, see how it works, be a part. Same thing I did with Ethereum and a lot of these other altcoins early on. One of the best ways to learn and dive into a project and really learn all of the nuances, the pros and cons, is to set up a miner. Be a part of the network, be a part of the system, and it's cheap enough where you can get one of these little bots on not bots, these little hubs. You can get them on Amazon for like $200, $300. But I want a 5G one because I really think that even though there's not a whole lot related to the 5G systems yet, that's coming. And when a lot of these other milestones and things associated with Helium finally come to fruition, I can see the 5G elements of these hotspots being a really, really big deal and hopefully pumping up, yield. So on that note, check out the Murder of Crows, murderofcrows.io. Mint yourself 1 or 10 if you haven't already. The airdrop is coming August 31st with the Twisted Times, the treasure hunt. People have already started working on it, and it's funny reading the comments of people trying to figure these things out. There is so much to each card, each NFT as it relates to the treasure hunt. And the people are not anywhere close to even figuring out. Actually, Andy, the very first one, it's funny because I'm just watching like a giddy school child just, like I hid the cookies and everyone in the class is trying to find them and nobody's even remotely warm. So on that note, crow your coins, folks. I'll see you again soon. Thank you, Coin Bureau, for your work. And thank you guys for watching. Hit the like if you don't mind. Hit the subscribe. And let me know, do you like these kind of reaction videos? If you do, I'm thinking about starting a brand new channel with nothing but, just kind of a way to supplement the content on one channel to the other. So let me know in the comments below what you think. And until next time, I'll see you soon.